A silence hung over the kitchen long before anyone realized why. One container. A simple metal box meant for imported produce. Yet inside that box, 147 unregistered diamonds vanished without leaving a single trace. February 14th, 2021, 4:12 a.m., Antwerp, Belgium. The camera in cold storage Unit C flickered under pale green light. Condensation rolled down steel walls like thin streams of mist. Forklifts idled in the distance. Every sound felt muffled, swallowed by the hum of industrial refrigeration. At that exact moment, a food container marked for a fine dining restaurant in Rotterdam slid across the polished concrete. The security feed showed nothing unusual. No tampering. No irregular weight shifts. No unknown personnel in the area. Just 19 hours later, authorities discovered the loss. $12.4 million worth of diamonds, gone. No alarms triggered, no access logs altered, no camera compromised. A perfect disappearance inside one of the most heavily monitored supply routes in Europe. Every day, more than 3,800 containers pass through Antwerp's inspection lines, every one of them stamped, scanned, weighed, and documented. The system is designed to leave no shadow, no blind spot, no opportunity for something as valuable and traceable as diamonds to simply slip away. That's what made this incident impossible. Every mile between Antwerp and Rotterdam was tracked. Every transfer point had oversight. Every manifest lined up with digital logs to the decimal. And yet, one container traveled the full route, flawlessly, while carrying something no one expected. No forged papers. No suspicious movement. Just the quiet precision of a normal shipment, hiding an extraordinary crime. But what happened next changed everything. Adrian Vale was never the kind of man people noticed. At 38 years old, he moved through a kitchen the way a precision instrument moves through metal. Quiet, exact, predictable. He was the head chef of a Michelin-level restaurant in Rotterdam, yet his presence felt colder than the steel counters he worked on. Observers often described him the same way, a man who saw everything and revealed nothing. The roots of that silence went back decades. Adrian grew up in a cramped apartment overlooking the port of Maasvlakte, one of Europe's busiest container zones. From the window, he watched cranes lift more than 30,000 containers a day, each marked with codes, weights, and destinations. Most kids learn to read books. Adrian learned to read shipping labels. His father worked the night shift at the docks. Long hours, low pay, inconsistent. And in 2004, a single bad decision collapsed the family. A failed under-the-table deal cost his father everything. Bankruptcy, humiliation, a quiet retreat from the world. Adrian was 15, old enough to understand what happened, too young to stop it. Something in him froze that year, emotionally, psychologically, like a valve that locked shut under pressure. But that freeze came with an unexpected side effect. His mind sharpened. He developed what coworkers later called an impossible memory. He could recall entire layouts of walk-in freezers after one glance. He could track deliveries by heart, their times, their routes, even the driver's habits. He noticed when a scale was off by 0.3 of a kilogram. He noticed when a manifest number didn't match its printed label. And above all, he noticed patterns in systems most people never bothered to look at. In the kitchen, these skills made him exceptional. In the wrong context, they made him dangerous. By 2019, the restaurant was drowning in debt, rising rent, shrinking customers, and the quiet pressure that comes when investors want answers. Late one winter night, the owner approached Adrian with a proposition. A partnership with people who move goods through Rotterdam, goods far more valuable than truffles or imported seafood. He didn't threaten Adrian. He didn't have to. The offer was presented like a menu, simple, structured, inevitable. Help stabilize the restaurant, help keep everyone employed, just participate in a discrete arrangement. For a man who spent his life studying systems, it wasn't the risk that unsettled him. It was how effortlessly that offer aligned with everything he already understood. And that was the moment Adrian began to change. The supply chain between Antwerp and Rotterdam was designed to move fast, stay cold, and leave no unanswered questions. Every morning, before sunrise, trucks lined up along the docks, steel containers stacked in rows under a pale industrial glow. Temperatures inside the cold units dropped to 22 degrees Celsius, keeping seafood and premium produce stable for the 74-kilometer route toward the Netherlands. It was a system built for efficiency, and a system that trusted its own machinery more than the people who worked inside it. From the moment a container left Antwerp, 5 entities touched its journey: cold storage, transportation crews, customs, receiving staff, and the kitchen that signed the final inventory. Each step had a sensor, a timestamp, or a form. Every action left a trace. Security was layered like an onion. 24-hour CCTV monitored every dock lane. GPS tracking logged the truck's position every 15 seconds. Digital manifests recorded weights down to the decimal, critical for preventing spoiled shipments. And inside the cold rooms, rotating staff checked temperatures 3 times per shift, logging them on handheld devices. On paper, it was airtight. In practice, it relied on routine, the kind of routine that dulls attention. As investigators later noted, every system, no matter how advanced, carries a weakness born from predictability. Here, those weaknesses were subtle. The first crack appeared in the cold rooms. When warm air meets steel, chilled below freezing, fog blooms into a dense white vapor. This created cold, blind spots, short moments where cameras lost clarity for 8 to 15 seconds. It wasn't a malfunction, just physics. The second weakness came from the night shift. Between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., staffing dropped to its lowest levels. 1 guard monitoring 3 zones, 1 forklift operator covering 2 lanes. People trusted the system to run itself during the quietest hours. Inventory added another layer of vulnerability. Food shipments often arrived with natural weight variations: ice melt, packaging moisture, trimming loss. A 2% to 4% discrepancy was considered normal. That meant containers rarely got reweighed unless the difference was extreme. But the most human flaw was the simplest. Workers trusted paperwork more than their own eyes. If the manifests were correct, they accepted it. If the driver seemed familiar,
so that's why we
they
always
waived
do it
the
this
recheck.
way.
If the shipment was labeled high-end restaurant supply, it moved faster through inspection.
I understand.
The trust came from experience, and that experience made the system feel untouchable. 5 layers of checks, 5 layers of confidence, 5 layers that convinced everyone nothing dangerous could hide inside a food container. No one imagined a chef, someone seen as part of the receiving end, could understand the entire structure well enough to exploit what others overlooked. But every fortress has a crack. He spent 5 months watching a system most people never thought about. 5 months standing at loading docks, reviewing logs, and memorizing rhythms the way chefs memorize recipes. From a distance, Adrian looked like any dedicated head chef checking deliveries. But underneath that quiet exterior, he was mapping an entire supply chain with the patience of someone studying a fault line before it breaks. He started with people. Shift changes at 2 a.m., 6 a.m., and 2 p.m. He tracked which guards arrived early, which ones drifted in late, and which ones carried the tired posture of someone who would overlook minor details. He noticed how long each forklift operator stayed in blind corners, how often the cold room doors were propped open during unloading. Every routine became a data point. Then he studied the building itself. He learned the exact moments when the freezer's humidity spiked, when warm outside air rolled in and fogged the cameras for 8 to 12 seconds. Not enough to raise concern, just enough to obscure clarity. He observed this phenomenon more than 40 times across those months, always at the same temperature shifts. He monitored the GPS logs of past shipments, frame by frame. Trucks typically lost satellite lock for 6 to 8 seconds in the same tunnel south of Bergshoek. Nothing abnormal, just infrastructure interference. But to Adrian, every repeatable interruption meant one thing: predictability. He reviewed hundreds of inventory records. Imported seafood could fluctuate in weight by as much as 3.1% due to ice melt. Premium produce sometimes arrived lighter than listed because of packaging humidity. These discrepancies were accepted as routine, a margin built into the system so things could keep moving. And he studied habits inside his own kitchen. Who signed off shipments quickly? Who double-checked weights? Who skipped steps during the dinner rush? Most people trusted paperwork. Most people trusted routine. Everything he examined was legal. Everything he touched was allowed. He used only what a chef was expected to use. Standard inventory sheets, delivery routes approved months in advance, stainless steel containers that matched existing kitchen specs, and paperwork so ordinary no one ever questioned it. Nothing he handled stood out. And that was exactly the point. Over time, Adrian ran small, harmless tests, adjusting delivery timing by 5 minutes, signing off shipments slightly earlier than expected, or receiving containers with tiny weight variations. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. But enough to prove a truth he had suspected since childhood. Complex systems don't fail at their strongest points. Nay, they fail at their most human ones. The deeper he went, the more obsessed he became. He developed rigid routines, recording timestamps to the second, tracking staff breaks, writing notes in a kitchen logbook long after everyone else had gone home. He started sleeping less, sometimes staying in the restaurant until 3:40 a.m., alone with the steady hum of the refrigerators. The kitchen became his world, his laboratory, his control room, and after months of watching patterns repeat with machine-like regularity, one conclusion settled in. The system wasn't built for someone like him. It was built for people who followed rules, people who trusted the structure, people who never questioned predictable behavior. Adrian wasn't one of those people. He understood the rhythm, he understood the gaps, and most importantly, he understood the predictability of everyone around him. And now, everything was ready. At 2:11 a.m., Antwerp's cold storage facility looked like a world suspended in frost. A container, ordinary stainless steel, frost clinging to its hinges, slid across the concrete and disappeared behind a set of industrial doors. CCTV caught everything. The forklift's slow turn, the vapor rising from his tires, the empty expression of the operator starting his shift. Nothing looked unusual. At 2:24 a.m., the night crew rotated. One guard clocked out, another clocked in, rubbing his eyes, posture heavy from fatigue. Security tightened on paper, but loosened in reality. Investigators later noted this exact window showed a 22% drop in active monitoring across similar facilities. At 2:31 a.m., warm air from the loading dock collided with the freezer's sub-zero interior. Fog expanded like a slow-motion cloud, wrapping around the camera lens. For 14 seconds, the feed blurred into white static, nothing more than moisture and cold. A natural blind spot, predictable to anyone who understood the building's breathing pattern. By 3:05 a.m., the container rolled out of Antwerp. GPS pinged the truck's position along the A12 highway, steady, uneventful, hitting every checkpoint at the expected time. Traffic was minimal, weather clear. Zero anomalies. Just another shipment moving at 82 kilometers per hour, exactly as scheduled. As the sun rose over Rotterdam, the container crossed its final inspection point. At 7:42 a.m., it arrived behind the fine dining restaurant where Adrian worked. Drivers logged the delivery, temperature checks passed, paperwork matched the manifest. At 7:48 a.m., Adrian performed the most routine act of his day, verifying inventory. He moved with clinical precision, opening boxes, checking labels, recording weights. There was no urgency in his movements, no shift in expression, no hint that this shipment carried anything unusual. To anyone watching, it was a chef doing what chefs do every morning. By 9:20 a.m., the container reached the back kitchen. Steam from the prep area mixed with the cold air spilling from inside the unit. CCTV showed nothing but normal workflow. Cooks sharpening knives, deliveries stacked in the hallway, metal trays clattering in the distance. And this was the most disturbing part, the absolute quiet. No alarms triggered, no guard called in a discrepancy, no sensor flagged irregular weight. The system accepted the shipment exactly as it would accept thousands of others that day. Every camera angle looked routine, every log entry appeared correct, every motion felt predictable. Each step in the timeline acted like a psychological anchor, small, ordinary details that convinced everyone the shipment was clean. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft echo of wheels on concrete, the stillness of a morning kitchen coming to life. Nothing broke the pattern. Nothing signaled danger. Nothing revealed what investigators would only discover many hours later. And then, the unexpected happened. For weeks, nothing in Adrian's routine changed. His movements stayed precise. His tone stayed flat. His presence blended into the stainless steel calm of the kitchen. But in systems built on routine, disruption rarely comes from the outside. It comes from the person who notices a detail no one else sees. Her name was Alba Torres, 26, line cook, quiet, disciplined, often the first to arrive for morning prep. And unlike most of the staff, she watched people as closely as she watched the food she plated. By early March, she had noticed a pattern. Adrian always handled the morning inventory alone. He never asked for assistance. He locked the back door behind him, and he recorded weights with an accuracy that felt performative, like someone acting normal rather than being normal. On March 11th, 2021, at 9:18 a.m.,
Message forwarded.
she sent a short message to the restaurant manager. Something's off with the deliveries. He won't let anyone help. 太少. The manager forwarded it to their logistics partner. The partner escalated it to customs, and within 36 hours, it reached the desk of an Interpol analyst in The Hague. That's when the anomaly surfaced. A clip from Antwerp's cold room. A window of 14 blurred seconds. Just fog on the lens, but occurring at the exact moment one particular container entered the freezer. Fog wasn't unusual, but the timing made investigators look harder. Interpol opened a quiet review. Not a criminal case, just an inquiry. They pulled route data, manifests, and temperature logs. They replayed over 200 hours of security footage from the Antwerp to Rotterdam corridor. Analysts built a timeline down to the minute, every checkpoint, every employee login, every weight entry. And for the first time, a pattern began to appear. Not a proof, not a smoking gun, just a rhythm, consistent enough to raise questions. Adrian came close to being exposed.
Now, let's observe the next phase.
Closer than he ever knew. Because in the end, the system didn't save him. The paperwork did. Every form was correct. Every manifest matched. Every temperature reading aligned with expected ranges. There was no missing weight, no altered label, no digital footprint out of place. Everything looked legal. Everything looked clean. And without concrete evidence, Interpol couldn't open a formal case. The inquiry stalled. The suspicion lingered. And Adrian continued working as if nothing had happened. Somehow, they survived the moment. The story broke on a Thursday morning. Cold headlines across Europe carried the same line. 147 unregistered diamonds vanished between Antwerp and Rotterdam. Newspapers from Brussels to Berlin ran graphics of the trade route. TV anchors repeated the same statistic, $12.4 million missing, with the same unsettled tone. For the first time, the public realized that something had slipped through one of the most secure shipping corridors in the EU. Pressure mounted fast. By March 28, 2021, customs agencies ordered a full-scale review. Over 2,100 containers were pulled from rotation.
Have you been in contact with
checked,
anyone else in the last 24
weighed,
hours?
and compared against archived logs.
I have not.
Forklift paths were reconstructed. Temperature readings reanalyzed. Staff interviews repeated twice. But nothing stood out. Every container told an ordinary story. Every log looked clean. The system that should have revealed the flaw only confirmed how invisible it was. Meanwhile, the people at the center of the timeline began to disappear, not dramatically, but quietly, the way stress fractures vanish beneath the surface of metal. Adrian submitted a resignation letter on April 3rd. No explanation, no final shift. His apartment lease ended the same week. Neighbors reported seeing him leave before dawn, a single suitcase, no return. 6 months later, the restaurant's owner left Europe entirely. Flight records placed him in Buenos Aires. Company accounts tied to the restaurant were frozen by Dutch financial authorities. No charges filed, but clear signs of irregular funding. Nothing tied directly to the missing diamonds. Nothing that answered the core question. The disappearance remained a ghost,
We continue to
visible
follow
only
this
in
developing
financial
story
shadows
with
and
breaking
subtle
news
departures.
coming out of the courthouse
Investigators
just
kept
moments ago.
digging. Journalists kept asking. The public kept speculating about a crime that had no shape, no culprit, and no traceable beginning. But the story wasn't over. In the months that followed, investigators tried to rebuild the timeline, but two pieces of the puzzle refused to fit. The original container, the one logged in Antwerp at 2:11 a.m., was never recovered, not misplaced, not reassigned. Gone. Its trail ended at a GPS entry that showed 13 minutes of overwritten data, a gap so precise it felt intentional, and yet carried no digital signature. Speculation filled the void. Some believed Adrian had been working for a larger international syndicate, using the restaurant as a quiet receiving point.
There's a clear
Others
anomaly in
argued
Sector
he had
7.
only been a system tester,
But what about the
someone
recent
proving how
energy
fragile
fluctuations
a
in
global
that same
supply
region?
chain could be. And a smaller group insisted he had been the mastermind all along, someone who learned the entire structure from the inside and then stepped into its shadows. One final detail kept investigators awake. During the restaurant's closure review, a single food receipt was found taped behind a storage shelf. No signature, no date. Just 5 handwritten words. Perfect timing isn't coincidence. It raised a question no system could answer. If a chef could move undetected through 5 layers of international oversight, what else had slipped up through the same cracks without anyone noticing? Or maybe the truth disappeared with him.